Hi, and welcome to what is episode 6 of the iOS and macOS device management series with Microsoft Intune. Now, in this particular episode, we're going to look at actually enrolling an iOS or iPhone device into Microsoft Intune. But if you haven't already, take a look at these. These are all the prerequisites you need to follow in order to get your environment set up. Now, I know other videos take you through every individual step or every individual option available. I'm going to try and be quite snappy and get you up and running really quick. So let's get started. So first off, we're going to head off into the Intune Admin Center. This is where we're going to manage our devices. And the first task is we're going to set up Apple VPP or Volume Purchase Program. The purpose of this really is to allow and synchronize your applications from Apple Business Manager into Intune and then allow them to be deployed to your devices. So Apple Volume Purchase Program allows administrators to purchase and distribute application licenses for iOS devices in bulk. So that's the real benefit there, and you're tying it to an Apple Business Manager administrative Apple ID, which allows you to do that. So we're going to head into tenant administration, and then we're going to go into connectors and tokens, and you'll see an option for Apple VPP tokens. Now, I've already got one in here that I created, so I'm synchronized currently, but I'll go ahead and show you how to do it. So you put a name in, let's call it VPP token. I'm going to put the Apple ID in, and then lastly we're going to select our particular token that we've downloaded. Now, the way you get this token, let me quickly go over to Apple Business Manager. So within Apple Business Manager, you go into preferences, go to billing, payments and billing, and depending on what permissions you have, you'll see different things in this pane, this window here. But this is my location that's been set up, and I can download the token, and that's how you do it there. And that's the token that you use within Intune. So we'll hit back onto Intune, and then we hit the next. Then we can select our region, UK for me, and then you've got business or education. Now this is just depending on whether you've got an Apple Business Manager for business or you're setting it up for education. In my case, it's business. Now with automatic updates, this is basically saying that it's associating the apps with the token. And I'm going to say no for the time being. I'm going to grant it permission, and then you'd hit the next, select your scope tags, which I don't generally use, and you'll go through to review. Okay, so I'm going to close that there and go back, because like I say, I've already got one. So connectors and Apple VPP, and there's my token. So once you've done that, what you would do in here is actually go through to the three dots at the end, you hit that, and then you hit the sync. Okay, you need to do that. Once that is finished and you go through to apps, iOS and iPad OS, you'll get those applications synchronized through, and this allows you, like I say, in bulk to distribute those applications. So that's task one really. The next task we're going to do is we're going to go through and set up the enrollment profile. So you'll see we have two options here. You've got iOS and iPad OS and macOS. We'll go through them individually, but effectively they mean the same thing. Because we're going through an iPhone enrollment, we'll select iOS here. And then what we need to do is select the iOS enrollment option. And in here, we would have already, in a previous video, you should go through this if you haven't already, but there's an enrollment program token. And we've already synced this up with Apple Business Manager, and there's the token there. So you select the token, specific token, and in here you'll also see devices. Okay, so assuming, again, if you've looked at the previous video, you would have seen how we kind of set this up and assign a specific device to your MDM server and sync that through to Intune. So we've got that here. As you'll see, it's not actually assigned. There's no profile assigned to it currently. Okay, and if we go into profiles, we're not set any up. So we're going to go ahead and set set one up here. You get the option for both here, and like I say, I'll take you through that one, but let's do the iOS, iPad OS. So we want to do the iOS profile. We'll click through on that. So this is where we start getting into the detail of the deployment profile for automated device enrollment. And here we've got initially the user affinity. Now with user affinity, you're effectively saying you're going to assign this to a particular user, and you want that user to authenticate. If I switch that to without user affinity, you haven't got those options. So I'm going to use user affinity. I do want my user to authenticate. And then you've got authentication methods. Okay, now you've got a number of options here: company portal, setup assistant, and setup assistant with modern auth. Now this particular area can be a little bit tricky to understand, and I think it's important that we do here. So I'm going to switch over to the Microsoft details here, and you've effectively got, well, it did say 3, but there is another. You got the just-in-time registration. I won't go through that here. Look through the documentation yourself. It's not particularly common at the moment, but have a look at it, and it's in public preview, right? So we're going to have a look at the other 3. Okay, so setup assistant, let's start from the bottom, right, is legacy, and that's where you typically use that in nowadays with just an out-the-box experience, and particularly where you don't want to register your device with Azure AD, and also you don't want to use the modern authentication methods like MFA. So the 2 common ones are these 2 top options, Intune Company Portal. Now I've included this because it's important to know the detail. You use this effectively when you want to use MFA, if you want to give the option to change passwords and first sign on, reset expired passwords, register the devices with Azure AD, which we want to do because we want to do the management, and also use the features such in Azure AD such as conditional access. Now typically lots of customers, lots of companies want to do this now, so that's why this is quite common. And the other thing really is you want to automatically install company portal app during the enrollment. Okay, and we can do this by assigning the application, company portal application, through VPP, which we've already seen. So you can automatically install the portal during enrollment, and this will use the administrative Apple ID. So it won't need the end user to sign on with their own Apple ID. The other thing typical to this deployment is it's going to lock the device until the company portal app installs. Okay, so basically it's going to go through enrollment. They're going to have to log on, authenticate twice, and in the authentication with the company portal, it's at that point that the device gets registered. So that's the important bit there. When you go onto the setup assistant with modern auth, the key difference really is it's exactly the same as option 1, but you're not locking that device down, and which means that users can use the device even when company portal app isn't installed. So that opens up a few options really. So until the company portal and they've logged on, you haven't registered the device, which means any restrictions that have come down to the device effectively aren't necessarily applied, and can allow you to do things like wipe the device if you need to. Okay, so now the other point to raise is that automatically install company portal app, we'll see that in a minute, but essentially we're going to select this to yes, and it is the recommended option. The reason being is what it will do is this is the option that will determine whether the user uses their own personal Apple ID to log on or not. So if you select yes to automatically install, it will mean it will use the VPP option, okay, instead of the user having to use their own personal Apple ID. When it comes to multi-factor authentication, the key point to raise here is that MFA won't work with Setup Assistant with Modern Auth if you're using a third-party MFA provider. Okay, it'll only work with the Azure AD MFA, so just keep note of that. So let's head back into the Intune portal and we'll go through. So we've already gone through the authentication method. I'm going to lock this down. I'm going to make sure that the user has to sign on before the full enrollment completes. So we're going to use company portal. Install company portal app with VPP. We're going to use that. We're not going to say don't use it because we've explained why that is. Now when it comes to run company portal on single app mode, I'm going to leave this as no. The reason being because when you do this, it locks the device in a single app. So if you're wanting to use MFA, which is not compatible with, and you want to do the authentication on the device, it will be locked in. It won't allow you to do it. So I'm going to keep that as no for the time being. Now when it comes to supervise, it can't be changed without a factory reset. Okay, so basically that's going to stay as it is. You can lock the enrollment. Okay, and what this does effectively is it stops the user from removing the management profile from the settings menu. So I want to lock that. I want to keep this device locked down. Do I want the user to allow them to sync with computers? No, so I'm set that to deny all. You can allow it there, but I'm going to set that to deny all. I haven't got any certificates to add in because I'm not using the Apple configurator certificate, so I don't need that. And then finally what we've got here is we can add a device template, a naming template, use your company guidance on how you name your devices. You can do that there. I'm not going to do it for this test. The last setting we have is activate cellular data. Now this is fairly new. What this allows you to do is you can select the eSIM enrollment URL and put that in there, and during the enrollment it will activate that. It will send a command down to the device and the device will go off and try and get that eSIM automatically. I won't do that now, but take note, I am going to do another video around this, so I'll do it another time. So at this point we can go ahead and hit the next button, and what you see now is basically all the screens that come up during the setup assistant or the experience, the end user experience, right? Now you have to put something in for department and department phone. So I'm going to just put in for the time being enrollment, and we'll just put some dummy number in here. Okay, now this is if the user wants to click on the tabs, basically it's going to give them information about the support and basically the department that they can contact. Okay, so you've got this toggle button here. Now generally speaking you don't have to switch any of these on. I like to toggle them all off, but I'd like to show the passcode. The terms and conditions here are the Apple terms and conditions, by the way. They're not your Intune terms and conditions. I'd like the user to be able to use Touch ID and Face ID, so I'll show that. And then maybe the onboarding. This is the onboarding experience. Okay, so the end user can do some changes to that on the appearance of the screen. So we're going to do that. Anything else we need to add? Maybe I'll add screen time to allow users to change that as they need to. So at this point we'll hit the next button. We can review what we've set up and then we can hit create. Okay, so I'm going to hit the create button there. It's successfully created. This is iOS profile, and this is the profile that we're going to assign to our device that we synced from Apple Business Manager. So if I go into devices, I've got my one device. I'm going to select that, and I can at the top here assign profile. So if I do the drop down, I've got one profile and I'm going to do that profile and assign it. Okay, so hopefully that will be successful. So now that I've got my profile and assigned it to my device, what I need to do is add some applications for enrollment or install during enrollment. Otherwise the experience isn't very good. So I'm going to go into apps, and if you remember on the apps from Apple Business Manager, we synchronize these using the connector, and I've got a couple that I'm going to add. So I'm going to add the Cardia app, which is a health app. It's currently assigned to nothing, so go into properties, go down to assignments, and then as required app, not a uninstall or available, I'm going to add a group here. I've got a group already called iPhone users, so I'll use that. And then I'll go to review, and I just make sure, yeah, we've got our iPhone users there, and we'll hit the save. Okay, so if I go back to apps, I also want to make sure the Office apps are installed, and remember these are VPP apps, so we're using the Apple Business Manager Apple ID. They're not having to use their own Apple ID, because this is the benefit of using the bulk enrollment in this case. So again, I'll go into properties, I'll look at the assignments, and under required I'll add the same group, iPhone users, review and save, make sure it's in there, it is, and then hit the save. Okay, so let's go back to apps for a second. I've got my two applications I want to deploy. Now I know as part of that group that Megan B is in that iPhone users group, so what I want to do is just go back to her account, and I want to check that she's got the right licenses first. She's going to need the license in order to do the enrollment. So as we can see there, she's got enterprise mobility and security, so that gives us Intune, so that's fine. And the last thing I want to double check is just to make sure that in order for iOS devices or macOS devices to be enrolled, that we have switched on the ability for those device types to be enrolled. So we go into devices, we search for enrollment device platform restrictions, and here we've got a default restrictions policy, so I'm going to click that, look at the properties, do the edit of the platform, and just check. And then we can see we've got iOS, iPad OS from a platform is allowed, and also personally owned devices are allowed as well. So we're going to make sure that this is on, which it is, and that's fine. So that will allow us to enroll the device. Now the last thing I want to check is just go over the enrollment profile from a Mac user experience. So if I click macOS there in devices and then go into enrollment, I'll go into enrollment tokens again, select our token, look at profiles, and I'm going to create a new profile. And if you remember, you got the two. If I click macOS this time and do macOS profile, you're going to see a difference. So you don't get all the options as you do with iOS and iPad OS. Okay, the only options you've got here is user affinity, and you've basically got the two options there, and you've got the ability to do a lock. So at this stage, the difference between the two is only that, but you will need to create a specific profile for your macOS devices. In this case, we're just using an iPhone, so it's not necessary. Okay, so this just leaves us with the end user experience, and we're going to go through and show the enrollment here. On the left hand side, you can see that I've got the Intune portal. It's showing the devices I've enrolled, and at the moment I've got no iPhone devices. On the right hand side, you can see my iPhone device. So this is an existing device, but I've wiped it and ready for enrollment. So I'm going to start the process. Now the first couple of screens basically are effectively the standard out-of-box experience. So I'm going to pick my country and region. Takes me to the quick start screen, so I'm going to hit the setup manual. And first off, I need to connect this device. Obviously it needs to connect on a broadband or internet connection in order to start enrolling. So I'll enter my password. Now you won't see my password here, but I've entered that, and I'm going to hit the join button. So it's going to join my wireless connection, and hopefully it should start going through the process of enrolling. Now the next step here will take a few minutes. It's just going to find out if this device is registered anywhere on Apple Business Manager to identify whether it needs to download any profiles and configuration. So it's registered, it's picked up that it needs to be configured, and it's also picked up my ABM, my Apple Business Manager tenant, as you can see there, and it's showing remote management. So we'll hit the next button, and it's going to start configuring the iPhone. At this point, it's prompted me to configure the Face ID. If you remember some of the settings in the enrollment options, I allowed the Face ID as one of those screens to pop up. I'm going to hit the setup later here because I'm not going to do it. Passcode, we need to enter a passcode for the device, so I'll set one up here. And it'll ask me to re-enter. Screen time was another one of those screens I allowed to pop up. Again, I'm going to set this up later. And then it goes straight into the front screen of the iPhone. Now you can see there that the company portal app installed. We configured that to be on the desktop, and that's come down. That's a VPP application there. And what will happen now is eventually the device will install the applications that we targeted for the device, or the user in this case. And on the Intune portal, we'll see there's nothing there yet, but if I refresh the screen, no, it's not appeared yet. So eventually the device will come up, and it will come up as pending. So we'll wait for that to happen before we progress. And there you can see the iPhone is now appeared. You'll notice that the ownership is unknown, primary user is unknown, and the Intune registration is showing as pending. Now this is because we haven't gone through and actually completed the cycle and registered the device. So I'm going to open the company portal app on the device, and I'm going to go in and sign in. So we've entered our user, which is Megan Beer, and hit the next, and it will prompt us for password. So I've entered the password, and now we'll sign in. So this should now start downloading all the management profiles onto the device and complete the registration into Intune. As you can see, it's come up with my Intune Move to Modern logo and tenant ID naming there, and we're going to begin the management process. So it's finished stage 1, and now we're going to go and check the device settings. Now this can take a few minutes depending on what profiles and settings that you've set up for the device. We haven't set any specific configuration of the device, so it shouldn't take too long to do. And there you have it, that's complete. So we'll hit the done button. So you won't see any apps that are available at this point. You can look around this application, have a look. For example, look in the support. This is where you would set settings up and you'd see information. Check to see if there's any notifications. And also you can look at the terms and conditions, for example, if you've set those up as well. So we'll close the application here. We are logged on. It should synchronize with Intune, and automatically you can see on the front screen of the device that it's starting to download those 2 applications that we targeted for the user, which is good news. And then what we'll do is we'll log into the Office application and complete the cycle. Meanwhile, on the Intune portal, this could take a few minutes to actually upload. If I refresh that, it's probably not going to update it straight away. No, actually it has. So there you go. You got the device ownership is set to corporate. So this is a corporate device. It's compliant, showing the OS that's on there. It's in a managed state. We've got the primary user as Megan, as we showed on the login, and there you have it. It's Azure AD registered as well. So we'll wait for those applications to install. We'll log on to the Office, and then we'll just take a look in Intune again to show that this is registered within the applications, and Office is now installed. So if I click on that, this is Office 365. I'm going to go to sign in, put in my user again, Megan, and we'll hit the next button and it will ask us to enter the password. There we have the password and a sign in. And there you have it. We can now go and create documents using that application. So that completes the full cycle. As you can see in Intune, we do have a compliant and corporate device which is managed by Intune. So we can do things like go and wipe that device if we wanted to. We can retire it, remote lock, etc. So you've got control of that device. If I just go back into the apps, let's have a quick look at the applications we'd installed just to make sure that we can see that. We're going to iOS apps. Remember we had Cardia. Let's have a look at the user install status. There you have it. So you've got Megan B that we use and it's installed one of those. If we look at the device install status as well, you can see there, and I can actually see the OS level of the device. If I quickly go back into the Office application here, if you remember, that's another one. We can see that here. These are the two assigned. We're going to Office. Should now be reporting that it's installed it. So user install, again we've got Megan. Okay, if I look at the device, I can see that it's in there as well. So thanks very much. Please check out the other episodes in the series, and if you like this, please like and subscribe to the channel.